Greetings, salutations, and hello, all my fellow freaks and creeps. I am VideoVomit. I'm a toy painter, I'm a toy designer, but more importantly, I'm a collector. I collect a lot of things. I collect video games, I collect movies, but most importantly, I collect toys. And I have a huge collection of toys. I collect many things. I collect weird toys, vintage toys, modern toys. I like things like Masters of the Universe, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Star Wars, all that stuff. But today we're talking about something a little bit on the dark underbelly of the toy world. They're called designer toys, or and specifically, we're talking about Sofubi. Sofubi is a Japanese vinyl toy, and Sofubi is a term for, well, it's a Japanese term for an American word, soft vinyl, or two words, soft vinyl. And so first I wanted to talk about just how these things are made. To be called Sofubi, it has to be made in Japan. And how they're made is where these factories aren't very big at all. When you think of a toy factory, you think of this, gigantic, billowing smoke or something like that. Factory in China or something like that. But these factories are, they're very tiny in Japan. They're very small. And a lot of times they're just run by, it's kind of like a mom and pop sort of thing. So these factories, they don't have a lot of equipment because they don't need that many. So this floor space is very small. So first they have this, it's like a giant spigot kind of like faucet thing that houses all this hot vinyl. And then you have these trays that are like they're metal molds of the toy, and it's like of the arm, the leg, the head, it's all separated. So then you kind of just take the molds actually kind of look like a deep frying trays in a weird way. So that's how they look, and then you just hang it under there, you pour the vinyl in there, and you kind of put it like go around and try and get it all over the edges there. Sometimes factories will have like a little centrifuge, and it'll spin it around really fast to get all the vinyl onto the walls of the mold. And then they'll repeat that process a couple times, put it in a chemical quench so it hardens it a little bit, and then they'll stick it in a rack, and then they'll pull it out with some jeweler's pliers. And then they'll put it together. They cut the flange off, they paint them, and then you got your Sofubi. So the first thing I wanted to talk, or the second thing I should say, the second thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit of a brief history behind these beautiful pieces of art. So toys were the first thing that Japan was actually able to export from Japan after World War II. They started with tin toys, and then they also moved into the soft vinyl production. At this time, it was around the 50s, and at that time, when they were making the toys, they were made out of celluloid. And if you've seen Inglourious Bastards, then you know that celluloid is extremely flammable, and it's not really good for toys. So a new production was created, which was soft vinyl, and it's made of plastisol. It's like a weird, like I said before, it's like a weird sticky kind of plastic in its liquid hot form. And then that's how they put it in the molds and stuff. And when the first toys that were made were more like it wasn't like anything specific to these like robots and stuff yet, or the monsters. When they were first being made, it was like cartoon characters and like little baby doll toys like Q-Pies and stuff like that. And then they started moving on to like what we all know now. It all kind of started with Godzilla and Gamera and all these movies after World War II, because they kind of focused heavily on like what life was like after World War II and stuff. Obviously, there weren't monsters running around, but you get what I mean. Because of what had happened to Japan, there was a very weird feeling in the air, and so movies like Godzilla and Gamera and like Akira later on in the 90s, or was it 80s, 90s, and so they kind of it was about the nuclear war and that bomb being dropped, and it kind of like reset everything. So the movies originally started out with Godzilla and all that stuff, and it went on to basically these toys had become so popular because of these movies, right? So you'd have your Godzillas and your Ultramans and your Devilman and all that stuff. So that's how it usually got down to. I really wanted to talk about some vintage Sofubi first, to just kind of show like a good timeline. So right here I have Zabogarman. He's like a karate robot. He transforms into a motorcycle. So these are kind of earlier ones. These are really old. This is a Shogun Warrior, which was another popular toy. The original Shogun Warriors were like these gigantic missile-firing things, but they also had these vinyl-produced ones as well. I'll also move on to some others here, like this one, the big man himself, Godzilla. Look at that. Yeah. So, Godzilla, a lot of these guys is like what kind of started it. Started the kaiju sort of craze. Then around to the 90s, early 2000s, the majority of toy manufacturing had moved to Japan, to China. And so it was cheaper, and it was just easier to get shit made there. And then this is around the time, like mid to late 90s, was the time when punk, and like toy punk started becoming a thing. Artists like Bounty Hunter and Secret Base kind of just really got the ball rolling with this stuff in Japan. And they were influenced heavily by those cartoon characters, the cereal box type of characters. And so they decided that they're like, hey, this is awesome. Look at these, they basically hijacked this toy manufacturing process because it was like virtually abandoned in Japan. And so then they kind of just took it over. And so artists, like I said before, Bounty Hunter, he actually created like everyone would consider one of the first vinyl toy or designer toys. And then Secret Base and Gargamel and Blobpuss and Reelhead, these guys started coming out of the woodwork, and they started making their own toys, and that created this whole new scene. It's toy punk. These guys were designing these toys. They were completely 100% self-sufficient, and that's such a cool thing in my opinion, because when I was a kid, I was heavily influenced by Japanese culture. And the cool thing is that when these Japanese artists, when they were kids, they had American toys. So it's kind of like a weird flip-flop sort of thing where American kids, will get super into Japanese culture, and Japanese kids will get super into American culture. And then later on, you can start to see these influences of both of them. So that brings me to, I want to talk about some of the newer vinyl toys. So I'll talk about Japanese artists first. So here's a Deathra from Gargamel. This is one that I painted. And then let's see what else. We got this awesome piece from My Rock Toy. Now, here's these are two Japanese vinyl artists, and you can tell. Just look at how simple, but yet just kick ass this one is. It's very influenced by the kaiju culture. And I love really simplistic things, very clean looking things. And then you go over here, and then this one is just so intricate and crazy and finely detailed. Just like the designs that go into these is just mind blowing. So let's look at some others. Some other Japanese artist vinyl that we got here. A lot of people love this guy. This is Kuman by Shirahama Toy. I feel like a lot of times artists' names or titles and stuff like that, it's kind of like comic book character names, where like you read it all day or something like that, and then you end up saying it out loud, and everyone's like, "What did you just say? What the hell did you just say?" So forgive me if I butcher names. And then this is like one of my favorite toys in my collection. This is made by a guy named Izu, and this is the Blood Guts Toys. That was his brand and stuff. This guy is awesome. This one's super hard to get. I did flips when I got this one finally, let alone be able to get the chance to paint something this beautiful. So I felt very lucky that I was able to do something like that. All right, so let's talk about some other ones, right? I did bring quite a bit of stuff. Let's look at some other Japanese artists here. I did mention Real Head, and this is a Real Head piece that I had painted. And then we got a Sun Guts piece that was unpainted. Real Head's really cool because he's just such a punk rocker, in my opinion. He has like this awesome style, and I feel like he really there's like a kind of a cool like head swapping, piece swapping kind of like they'll change out arms, heads. It's like a really great way to reuse those molds that I was talking about earlier. You reuse different parts, and you switch the head around, you switch the arms around, or create new arms, create new heads and stuff, and that it gives it longevity, right? You can make a bunch of different kind of ones, and just Real Head's like his whole selection of toys is huge. Many different kinds, not just like this whole body type, but he's got like, bigger ones, more robotic looking ones. And this brings me back to influences. The influences, are so prevalent in a lot of these toys. Like Sun Guts here, this is very traditional Japanese style of design. It bases on the yokai culture and their old stories and folklore and stuff like that. And then you go over here and you see that this one is heavily influenced by Kamen Rider, that whole like Super Sentai live action Japanese superhero TV show kind of vibe. And that's really cool. I think that especially when I was growing up, I always wanted toys from things that didn't exist, and then now you can create whatever the hell you want, and so that's really cool. I find that very interesting, and I find that when you tie culture into it, it gives it so much more strength because when you look at art, and all intents and purposes, these are art. They are conceptualized, and everything. So, that's what's just so beautiful about these, is that so much time is put into them, so much love is put into them, that it's just hard to miss. When you look at it, it's so catching, it's so different, it's so funky, and so yeah, that's a good thing. That brings me into American artists, and like I was talking about before, American artists. A lot of them are influenced by Japanese culture and vice versa. Japanese artists are very influenced by American culture. These ones, for instance, these are very heavily influenced by of Japanese culture. So let's look at some that are actually more heavily influenced. by American culture. Okay, so we got right here. We got some Paul Kaiju, and these are Paul Kaiju is an American artist, and these are very unique. All Paul's sculpting work and stuff is very, very unique and original and beautiful. I'd say that he's one of the strongest people out there. Like, you know, there are many people that that headline these sorts of things. Like, I would say Mutant Vinyl Hardcore, Secretary Toy, Splurt, and like Paul Kaiju. Those are some American artists that I think that really have set the bar very, very high for this collecting type. And so this one's Mockbat, and I painted both of these. Mockbat's really cool. This is like one of his signature designs. I'd say when his earlier toys had come out, I would say that this is probably, I'd still think that it's one of the most popular ones in my opinion. It's gone through a series of different sizes. Currently, Unbox Industries is making a giant one. I think it's like 3 feet tall. It'll cost around like $700. So if you got that kind of fliff, I would say buy one. And then we have Unchy Man here, and I love him because when it doesn't always have to be some striking creature. It doesn't always have to be some, you know, Fantasyland monster. Sometimes they can just be downright goofy, and there's like a specific charm about him. I don't know. I just love him so much. He's a giant poopy, and I think that that's just great. Because it sends this awesome message that if you wanted to make a giant turd for a toy, you totally could. You can make whatever your brain can come up with, and I think that that's kind of like the whole thing about this whole art, is where people conceptualize such crazy things, and where you'd go, well, I'd never see that on a toy shelf ever. But then yet here they are, here these toys are, here they are being made, sculpted, designed, all this stuff. And I think that that's beautiful. I think that's really cool. All right, some more American artists. Let's go with the big guys, huh? Let's try, this is a Violence toy. This is the Tower. Now he's awesome. This is clearly heavily influenced by like, you know, classic sci-fi robots. I just love like the simplistic design. Like I really like those nice and clean designs. It's really popular right now to do like very chunky, grimy, gross almost looking toys. But I do appreciate those. But I feel like there's something so like streamlined and technical about simplistic robots and monsters and stuff like that. I think that that's why I designed my toys so simple and so clean, because I like that. It reminds me, it harkens back to like older, you know, like 70s toys and stuff like that. So I think that that's where I got those influences from. So yeah, this guy's awesome. And then one of the things I love about him is that his little arm comes off here. Oh wow, that's so cool. Look at that. Have a good old time with that bad boy. All right. Yeah. How cool is that? And this is another one I painted. I love doing the dry rub technique, where you'll put some paint on there and you'll dab it and you'll wipe it off, and then it'll leave a paint behind in the nooks and crannies, and it'll bring out that intricate detail that the sculptors have worked so hard to make and get out there and produce. So that's fun. That's like my whole style. While I bring out another toy, I'll tell you about what I'm all into. This is a huge piece. This is one of my first real huge Sofubi kaiju pieces. This is Crawless. He was designed by Mutant Vinyl Hardcore and the art of Skinner. I believe this was like a tandem kind of like job together. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments there. But I mean, just wow, just like stuff like this just shows you how far that you can take these toys, and how far just how far that the soft vinyl production has come. I mean, like this is insane amount of details, an insane amount of work. Just when you think about it, like this is huge. This guy's ginormous. So cool. Yeah, then we got another one here. This is a Secre toy. This is the Cinema Monster, and I really like his influences on this one. It's very Ray Harryhausen. Those movies were a really huge part of my childhood, because they were like the first monster movies I had ever watched. And I always thought it was very cool because, for those who don't know, Ray Harryhausen, he did a lot of stop motion animation for movies like the Clash of the Titans. I would say is probably like one of the big ones. He did the Kraken on there, and I love that when I would watch those movies when I was a kid, I wanted the model that Ray Harryhausen was working with, this like armature thing that he was working with, and I thought that was so cool. I was like, wow, he's just playing with toys. But little did I know that there was so much work that went into there. But I always thought that was really cool, and that's kind of like whenever I look at this Cinema Monster here. And obviously the name, in itself, Cinema Monster, it harkens to the Ray Harryhausen thing. But I really liked him because it brought me back to those times where I would look at those movies and feel very inspired, feel very motivated by those movies, and feeling like, wow, man, I want to, I've always had this feeling of wanting to collect or create, creatures and monsters and robots and stuff. But I didn't know about the world that was waiting for me, like 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line later on. But yeah, these toys are incredible. They're so beautiful. So much goes into them, and just being able to paint them is such a privilege. And I love that these things that they make you think. I like that there's a certain sense of mystery behind these. Some of them have like little stories and whatnot behind them, but then others kind of just don't really have any backstory or anything like that. So it feels like you almost kind of project something onto that, or if you can see those influences of like old horror movies or something like that in there, then you look at this toy and you're like, wow, that makes me feel something. Like when I look at these toys, when I collect these toys, I feel something. It's like a little taste of nostalgia. But then it feels new again because I'm hunting something rare. I'm hunting something that was created out of love, And I think that there's something very it's such a cool 3D art kind of scene, And I just think it's so interesting, so cool, so modern. When you think about it. A lot of us this day and age, we're very materialistic, and that could be a bad thing. We're attached at the hip to phones and to computers and stuff. But then you have something like this out there where you can have some kind of like a different emotional connection to it. So I think that's part of like the allure of these things. Some like. A lot of people would say that like art is a good investment. You can never go bad with art. Like that with these things, I think it's so much more than that. I think it's so much more than just like some kind of investment to sell later on or to flip later on. Like a lot of the pieces in my collection, I don't think that I would ever part with. I don't think that I would ever get rid of them. They're not like, it's not like vintage toys or something like that. I think it's so much more than that. Just seeing how much time and effort goes into these is very mind blowing. I've had a toy in development for like 2 years, one of these soft vinyl toys, and I just now, like maybe a few months ago, saw like the first pull of one of these, and it felt very good. It felt like a very bright sense of accomplishment, because of just how, it is difficult to get these made. It is difficult to scrounge up the money or whatever like that. But then at the end of the day, you've created something unique to the world, and it's not just a painting. And it's and there's movies and television and stuff that people work very hard on. But then when you pick one of these up and you touch it and you play with it and you look at it, it gives me like a certain sense of joy. It brings me back a little bit. I've always been really into toys. I've always been really into collecting things. Since I was a little kid, I got my first Batman figures, and then I don't think I looked back from then. So I just kept collecting, and then it evolved into an art form, and I think that that's cool because I don't think that there are a lot of people out there that are willing to give up collecting things, and I feel like it's cool to have a little, God, I almost said a little kid inside you. God, that would have been so bad. Well, I said it anyway, whatever. But it's nice that there's a piece of your childhood still locked up inside of you somewhere. And I think that the longer that you keep that kid alive, the longer I think you'll be happy with yourself. You'll be happy with life. It feels like a screwed up thing to say that materialistic items could make you happier in life. But I feel like that when you collect something, it's not just you're collecting these toys. When you start collecting it, you enter a whole scene of people that are just as dedicated as you are. They're just as into it as you are, and that's like a cool sense of community. You get along with these people, or you don't sometimes. And then when I started, my whole thing is I collect them. I try to get blanks or something like that, or something like this, so I can paint it. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, which I've done before. When I was naive and I didn't know anything about the scene, but now I try to just get the blanks or something like that, or if a colorway catches my eye. That's a good thing to talk about. How do you get one of these things? Where do you find them? I get asked those questions a lot. I think that you can find them on the aftermarket, but on like eBay or sometimes there are specific sites that sell these. I wouldn't recommend them because a lot of times they'll be doubled in price. It depends on just how much you want to or how much you want this piece in your collection. There are some people that that only collect certain colors of vinyl. There are certain people that only collect a certain, they like a certain figure and they want to get every single variant in that line. And that's a cool thing. I think that the whole collecting side of it is a whole other thing. I collect with just whatever catches my eye, but my shtick is that I paint them and then they go in the collection and everything feels cohesive because it was all painted by me. And there are other collectors out there that have much more specific criteria than I ever would, and that's a cool thing. I think that it's like vinyl collectors, not this kind of vinyl, record vinyl. Somebody likes every single, they've bought in every single color and variant of a Sex Pistols album or something like that because they just love it that much. And I think that passion is what kept this type of production going, and passion is what will keep this thing going for a long time. As long as there's somebody interested in these things, as long as there's somebody who's willing to go, geez, I've always really wanted to make my own toy. I've always really wanted to make my own monster or robot or something. I think that that this is like the calling, you know. When I was younger, I always wanted to do something like that. I would always draw, you know, weird creatures and monsters and robots and stuff, and go and like look at it and be like, man, I wish that this was like a toy. I wish I could just grab it right off the page or something like that. And now that's possible, you know. If you have enough determination, if you have the drive, if you have the patience. Like I'm not the greatest sculptor in the world, but I've sculpted some smaller stuff. So you can get people to sculpt things for you. You can get people to draw things for you. You know, like a lot of that's kind of where this whole community thing comes into play, is that there's such a huge community of supporting people out there that love this and want to be part of it, you know, in one way or another. Yeah, you know, there's people out there that would draw and design it. You know, you have this idea in your head that you want to get out there. You know, then you explain to this person, and then they draw it out for you. Then there's, you know, you have that same vision, and you drew it out, and you're like, look at this. Here's the front, here's the back, here's the side, and you give it to a sculptor. And then they'll go through and they'll sculpt you something. I had that done for one of my smaller toys, where I went to a Japanese sculptor and I said, hey, here's my design. This is what I have in mind. And like I think like a year and a half later, you know, ding dong at the doorbell, and I had a new little sculpt there. And then I would say the hardest part of the whole process would be trying to find a producer or a factory that would get it made, because like I said before, a lot of these are like mom and pop sort of things, and then there's like American people who will travel to Japan and will like oversee the process, or like I said, they will produce it. You know, they'll kind of like watch over things. But there's not a lot of, fewer and fewer people are actually doing it. So I'd like to see it in the next couple of years. I'd hope that maybe that it doesn't completely disappear, because like I said, these things are beautiful. It's like an art form, you know. It's a medium that isn't practiced as much because of its difficulty, you know. But then you can't argue with the results, you know, because they're so beautiful. Yeah. So I talked about where they came from. I talked about how they're made. I talked about what they mean to me. And I think that I should probably wrap this up by saying that I'm so lucky that I'm part of this community already. I highly encourage people that are interested in this to just take a look. I mean, I got started just by collecting them and in finding out what I liked. I actually got started by collecting little cute stuff. And I know a lot of people that started the same way, where they started collecting, you know, little cute stuff. Like, look at these cuties. Wow. Isn't that cute? Little cats and puppies, and they got like that Godzilla look to them. But yeah, I think that, you know, like I got started by I was so into Max Toy Co. I was so into Kantatsu that I needed to know more. I needed to know. I was on Tumblr of all places, and I saw them, and I needed to find out more about them, where they were from and how they were made and all that stuff. So and I just dove headfirst into this world, and I came out on the other side completely enthralled by just how they're made, all the kind of crazy shit that goes into getting them made, and I thought that was so inspiring to me, and it harkened back to that old desire to to make my own toy, and then it kind of like built up from there. You know, I was so intrigued by the painting aspect of it as well that I had never picked up an airbrush, yeah, until about like 5 years ago, and now I'm airbrushing, you know, Sofubi and having a great time, and I'm getting better at it, and it's so much fun. I just can't I can't thank everybody enough for following, you know, subscribing and all that stuff, and then all the friends that I've made just in that scene alone. And I think that there is like I feel like I was missing something before, like a belonging. And I think through that little niche, you know, I think I found something that I feel very comfortable in. A lot of people, you know, they find their sports or their music or something like that. Well, I collect weird Japanese toys. I collect, you know, all kinds of stuff. But these toys, they really are art, and they hold interpretation. They hold sentimental value. They hold all kinds of things. And like I said before, I feel like we're much more of a materialistic culture now. So, and that it's not such a bad thing, I don't think. I think that that when you get into stuff like this, it's not a bad thing. I don't think I've met anyone before where I told them what I collect, or, you know, I do feel self-conscious. I mean, a lot of people, you know, could feel self-conscious about collecting toys or something. But when I've talked to people about it, the people might not know what it is, but when I explain it to them, they get very interested and intrigued, and they want to know more. Or I'll show them pictures of stuff that I've painted, and they're very into it. And I think that that's cool, and it says something about our culture today, that how like it's gotten so closely knitted with, you know, nerd culture, if you will, and how it's more socially acceptable. And I think that that's pretty cool, and I think that it says that we're going places as people are concerned, I should say. So yeah, I hope that I had a good conversation with you guys. I hope that you guys learned a little something. I hope I opened up a new door to you guys. For people that are into Sofubi and that do collect, I hope I did us a little justice. Feel free to scream at me in the comments if I didn't mention something that you were screaming at the screen to mention. Be sure that everyone knows about that. And man, this was fun, and I really hope that in the next coming weeks I can show you guys more stuff that I'm into. You know, I want to get into doing lots of crazy different stuff. So I had so much fun. Be sure to hit that notification on YouTube, so every time that we do go live, you'll be able to know about
60
it.
seconds remaining.
Follow the Facebook bunker, and do all that good stuff, so you'll be able to catch us at any time that we go live, or anytime we post a new video or something like that. Well, this has been beautiful. Thank you so much. Please don't die out there in the barren wasteland. I wanna talk to you guys more about some stuff. Until next time, it's been VideoVomit, and signing out.